Good morning, Southeast Missouri, and wherever you may be listening. This is the Retirement Playbook brought to you by Alspal Wealth Management. We are the retirement people, and we're here with you every day. Now, we can say that. Isn't that right, Mr. Tony Shore? Good morning, Tony. How are you?
Good morning, Brock Olspa. I am so good because today is a very special show. We're excited about today's show. I'm excited to be here. And we do the show every week. I am. And I just love spending time with you. You know that. We always joke around before the show. I love it.
Here we go.
I love it.
Jeez.
Yep. I'm bucking for a raise.
Folks, he says that about everybody. That's the problem here.
No, I don't. Not everybody. A lot of people. Yeah, I say it to most people. But,
yeah, he's right, everybody. Anyway, listen, we have a great show lined up today. I am very excited about this because we have this conversation about what does retirement look like to you? And everybody's answer is different. And quite frankly, Tony, that's why I love what I do, because I come into the office every day and I help people, and everybody's situation is different. And it's a challenge to me, and I accept it every single day. And I'm
awesome.
Yeah. So I'm really pumped about today's show. But before we get started, I want people to go to our website. It's alspaughwealthmanagement.com, ALSPAUGH, wealthmanagement.com. You can check out past shows. You can download the Retirement Income Toolkit along with information about the Roth conversions. Excuse me. Another continues to be a huge topic for a lot of people, even if you're retirement. So, like you said, oh, hey, Tony, Brock, I don't want to pay all these taxes on converting these dollars over to IRAs. But maybe you do, because now we've got an account that's going to continue from that point forward to grow tax-free. And we don't have required minimum distributions at age 73. And it's a great estate planning tool. So even if you're in retirement, excuse me, even if you're in retirement, it could be a good idea. Now, I would say that that's probably, not always the case, that if you're looking at doing Roth conversions, it's typically because you're younger. But again, I just bring it up. Just because you're in retirement already, don't just, bypass that whole Roth conversion. It could definitely work for you. Anyway, back to our website, Alspal Wealth Management. You can also order my book, The Last Paycheck, how to keep those paychecks coming in. And then also, lastly, YouTube, folks. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to that channel, click that button, and you'll get notifications of when new shows come out. It's exciting. This is still a newer thing for us. We're really excited. And then also, as always, you can get our podcast on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast. All right, Tony, you ready for today's topic, buddy?
I am ready. What are we talking about today? We're talking about retirement planning, right?
Yeah, well, of course, we always talk about retirement planning, but today we're going to talk about 3 phases of retirement planning, or 3 phases of retirement. So a lot of people just kind of have it in their head, I think. I've been doing this for over 20 years, Tony. A lot of people think, oh, well, I'll just get to 65 and I'm going to quit working and I'm going to do whatever I want every single day and life's going to be grand. Well, I'm here to tell you, folks, that's not exactly how it works. Right. And a lot of times you phase into retirement. And what I mean by that is maybe you go to part-time, maybe you go from 40 hours a week to 30 or 20 or 15 and maybe step it down. That's pretty typical, actually. So you're not going to just say, oh, hey, at 65, I'm going to qualify for Medicare and I'm just going to cold turkey quit working. And by the way, that does happen. It's just that a lot of people aren't quite ready for that, because there's a difference, Tony, of being ready financially to retire. We've talked about this many times, and emotionally ready to retire, because And really, where I really see this, where people quite aren't ready for retirement, is with business owners. Okay, it's a big transition for these people that have been in charge, they've been in control, and all of a sudden, that's not quite the case. So we've got to work at what are we doing to fill our time during the day, right? If it's
Right.
golf, go do golf. If it's travel, I'm sure it's all of these things. Go do the things, the fun things.
Yep.
But there's also a component of it, not just doing fun things, but doing things that make you feel accomplished. If you are a goal oriented, which again, many business owners are, hey, you need to set goals for what you're going to be doing. What's your schedule going to look like? I remember when I was a kid, Tony, my dad in the summer, because remember, in the summertime, we were off school and, you just not really have a plan, just lived. And I worked in high school, but before that, even my dad, he would make me write a schedule out, right, of what I was doing during the days. So he had goals for us like, hey, let's read this book over this many weeks. Let's if you're going to work out, go do your track workouts or what have you. And so it was basically a plan. It kind of laid out my summer and week by week. That may sound awful to some kids nowadays, but I'm thankful that my dad did that because it shaped me and my goals and the way I operate today in my life.
Yeah.
So I'm sure, Tony, you have some of those examples too. It's just different now. I get it, but there's something to be said about planning out your days,
Yeah.
right?
I would agree. And so you need to have a plan in place. And we're going to talk about the three phases of that, what you do 10 years before you retire, 5 years, and 1 year. And I think it's going to be a great discussion today. There are different aspects to retirement planning and phases of retirement. So where do you want to begin our discussion today? What's
Yeah.
next?
Yeah, so we'll focus now on the financial side of things here. And so if there's one thing, Tony, if there's one thing I've learned during my career in the financial services industry, it's that there's no one size fits all financial retirement strategy. And your goals for retirement are likely to shift during periods of your life. When you're 25 and you're still in your career's early chapters, you probably don't give much thought to retiring other than maybe what, Tony, contributing to that 401k, right?
Right.
Which is good. That's just good. That's a really good thing. I mean, if when you're 25, the biggest thing you have on your side is what? Time. Time to let that money grow and compound and really gain value in that account. But oftentimes it's a totally different story, Tony. When you're 50 and your retirement is drawing closer, ultimately, though, you should build a financial and retirement strategy to grow and change as you age. So life changes, man. That's what I tell people all the time is like, we do these financial plans. We do income forecasting. We do growth measurements. We do all of these forecasts, right? And at the end of the day, life changes. And so should your strategy, right? So if something happens, maybe health-wise, maybe there's a death in the family, whatever it may be, life happens. And guess what? This whole blueprint that we've done for you over these years and looked at and monitored and made sure that you were on track for has just totally changed. And that's okay. You need to have a plan and a strategy that can adapt to anything that is going on in your life. Okay. It's not just about, hey, let's set this thing and forget about it. No, that's not the way this works. It's not the way it works. So, here's the deal, Tony. I'm going to reference a little article here by Motley Fool. It's planning to retire in 10 years. Do these 4 things first. It's really good. It has some really good information points in here to help people kind of understand, where they're at and, what they should be doing when you're going to retire in 10 years. So maybe you're 50 and you want to retire at 60. Okay. Well, these are 4 good things to do. Okay. So it tells us that the possible good first move when you're 10 years away from retirement is to determine how much money you'll need on a yearly basis to maintain your ideal retirement. Tony, this goes back to the B word that nobody likes.
Uh-oh.
Yep. It's the budget.
Budget. Yeah. We don't like that word. I don't know why we avoid doing it. Once my wife and I started doing a budget every month, it changed. It was like a weight was lifted off our shoulders.
That is literally the words I was going to use, Tony. It's like a weight being lifted off your shoulders.
Yeah,
it is so remarkably satisfying to understand what dollars you're spending and making the adjustments to make sure that we're not spending over the amount that's coming in every month. Making sure that you have money that you're saving set aside in your budget, right? To say, hey, I'm going to put $1,000 a month away for an emergency until I get to this level, and then I'm going to do this with that money. That's a strategy, right? That's
Right.
a very basic understanding of where you're at and where you're going. Okay, so understanding what it takes for you to maintain your lifestyle. I've said this so many times. I've said it yesterday with a client. It's not about how much money you have. So if you retire and you have $10 million or $300,000, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter how much money you make. Okay. You can make $1 million a year or $30,000 a year. Doesn't matter. You know what matters, Tony? It matters how much money you spend. That's
What
what
you
really
spend.
matters.
Yeah.
That's right. If it takes $20,000 for you to live off of and you're making 30, good, great job. If you're making $1 million, but you spend $1.5 million, that is not going to work.
Nope.
So it's not about what you make. It's not about how much money you have. It's all about your budget. Are you living within your lifestyle? Do you want a better lifestyle? Make more money. That's it. I mean,
right. And you've talked before on the show about how it's not how much you have, it's about how much you spend and when you have it. It's more about when you take the money out, where it's at, how
That's
much
right.
you spend than the overall amount.
Taxes, inflation. I mean, there's so many things to consider
Yeah.
here. But that's getting a little bit into the weeds at its fundamental basis. If we're saying, hey, understand what your lifestyle is
Yeah.
and accept it, right?
Right.
So if you make $100,000 a year, we can't live a lifestyle that is beyond $100,000. We've got to understand where we're at, where we're going, and what we're doing. Understanding that, hey, I'm making sacrifices now so I can have the benefit of that in the future. That's what retirement savings is all about, right? So if we move on to the next step, right? So we understand what our lifestyle cost, right? What it is and what it cost. Then we go into saying, okay, the next determination should be calculating how much total money you should have saved. So if you need to create X amount of income to continue to maintain your lifestyle, okay, let's call it $40,000 a year from your savings. If you add in Social Security, maybe a pension, maybe some rental income, those kinds of things, it gets you to where you need to be. Well, if you're going to withdraw $40,000 from your savings, Tony, you probably should have somewhere around $1 million in your retirement accounts. It's the whole 4% rule, right?
Right.
Don't take more than 4% of your balance to make sure you never run out of money. We can go through the ups and downs of the markets and interest rates and all this other stuff, and have confidence that that if you stick to that rule, that you're going to be okay. But again, it goes back to the first step, which is now we have to realize, okay, 40,000 plus my Social Security plus this, okay, it gets me to where I need to be. It's $75,000, $100,000 a year. Great, I can do that. That's what it's going to have to take. Otherwise, if it's more than that, guess what we got to do? We got to save more money. That means more sacrifices now. So the most important thing is the first step, understanding who you are, what it takes to maintain that lifestyle that makes you and your spouse or significant other happy. That's really what's important. Number two, then, is saying, okay, if that's the number, how much do we have to save to create enough income to continue that? That's the second step, right? It's not exactly rocket science. There's more that goes into that. Again, factoring in taxes and inflation. Really, really important stuff there. Okay. Now, deciding how much your Social Security checks, right? So make sure, so we're going on kind of the third step here, that we're maximizing our Social Security benefits. Because we can say that at 65, when we retire, that our Social Security benefit is going to be X. But if that's not the appropriate time to do that to maximize your Social Security benefits, maybe we ought to change our strategy a little bit. Maybe we need to take a little bit more from that portfolio for a couple of years to get to a point where you are maximizing your Social Security benefits. If we know we have an 8% increase from your full retirement age, which for most people now is going to be 67, then we need to make sure that, hey, if I elect at 67, that I'm not leaving money on the table there. And there's three things that go into that factor, Tony. You're talking about your own benefit, right? On your working record. Number two is your spousal benefits. So your spouse may be eligible for some benefits, even though maybe they were, doing something else or didn't work or took care of the house, whatever. Okay. And then number three, it's the survivorship That's the one. That's the big one that most people miss, is to say, hey, if we've got a husband or a wife that was a higher income earner over their career, we want to make sure that we maximize that amount to go to the spouse upon that death. So if my benefit was $3,000, okay, and my wife's $1,500, I want to make sure we maximize that. So we're going to delay mine a little bit longer. Okay.
Right.
So that is a common strategy to make sure that we're maximizing our total lifetime dollars that we're going to collect from Social Security. It's not about the paycheck at a certain age. It is, but ultimately what we want to do is make sure that at the end of your lives, both you and your spouse, that you have this pile of money that you've collected from Social Security. Of course, you've used it, but you get the point I'm illustrating.
Yeah.
Is that you have the biggest pile possible. And that's really what we're talking about here.
Right.
Okay. So, Tony, are you maximizing your Social Security, sir?
I will be. I'm not quite there yet, but yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were already that old.
Oh, sure. Well,
I gotta take a couple stabs at him every once in a while.
Yeah. Well, I know that you have that Social Security maximization report that you can run for people. So I want to stress that our listeners out there, to get their ducks in a row, get a second opinion on where they're at, or get a retirement plan in place, to give you a call at 573-332-7855 to figure out what they're going to need in retirement and get the plan rolling.
That's exactly right, Tony. And it goes, obviously, this is a big one, right? We've always said, make sure that you maximize your Social Security benefits. Well, what does that actually mean? How do we do that? Well, it's pretty simple, actually. If you go to ssa.gov or Social Security or My Social Security, go to your that webpage and create your account if you haven't already. Please do so. Okay. The reason I say that is because if you haven't created an account, and let's say you're in your 40s, right? You've had several years, most likely, of earnings, and you want to make sure that those earnings that are being reported for you are correct. Why?
Right.
Because that's what your benefit's going to be based off of when you retire. So
Yep.
just making sure that it's in line, it's right, and you don't have any zeros when there should have been a big number or any number at all, because those zeros count against it, right? I mean, you want to fill those zeros in. It's your highest 35 years, and then they have a test on it. It's not just an average, okay? I'm not going to go into the details, but the point is that go on and create that account if you haven't already, and we'll need that full estimation of benefits, okay?
Yep.
And then if you give us your Social Security statements, we can spit out a report that will show you how to do that, right? As far as maximizing your Social Security benefits. Now, the thing is that that's just one equation, because when are you going to retire? What's your risk tolerance? So now we're talking about color of money. There's just so many things that go into it, but the foundation of it is making sure that you maximize those Social Security benefits. No doubt, we can help you do that, like Tony said.
Yeah, and then managing risk is a big part of this whole process, and you need to start doing that probably 10 years out on up until you retire. You've got to start managing risk, right? As
Absolutely.
you get closer.
Absolutely, Tony. Yeah, you are exactly right. And the one thing that I've found interesting, and I've talked about this, Tony, several times. I've talked to the people out there about this, is that for example, the Southeast Health and Mercy transition.
Sure.
People being able to do something with their 401k that's just outside of just the funds that are available through, for example, the new plan with Fidelity. So we've been talking to people about, hey, the importance of getting a plan. And so when looking at some of these assets and some of the plan assets that these people have when they're coming in to see us, it is interesting. To say the least. And it's interesting because they maybe let their feelings and about what's happening in the economy, or maybe their personal feelings against maybe who is president or whatever that may be, and it's affecting how they're allocating their assets in their 401k. Right. And we don't want to do that. Okay.
No.
We're going to keep all the emotions out of this. I mean, this is This is
Your own emotions. You said it a week or two ago on the show, and I'm going to quote you. You said, your emotions affect, can negatively affect your finances more than politics can or will.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no question. And of course, this is a big election year here, this in 2024, and
Yep.
we already know who our most likely candidates are going to be, and so
Well,
there's been
sure.
lots of discussions about this. But when and maybe that right there had something to do with it, Tony. But you look at risk tolerance and you look about how you're invested, and you want to look at it like this: like, hey, no matter what your age is, okay, no matter when you're going to retire, maybe you're going to retire in 5 years, maybe it's 25 years. Too much risk or too little risk is detrimental to to getting to your goals. Okay, because what happens is if you take on too much risk and you're closer to retirement, we all know what could happen, right? Look
Right.
at the P&G folks that were going to retire in 2000, 2001, and 2002, and that did retire. And then also, if you're too conservative, right? If we're saying, hey, I'm going to put all my money because I can get 4% on a stable value fund. Okay, 4% is not bad for a stable value fund. I mean, something conservative and you're guaranteed to get 4%, sure. For
Yeah.
a portion of your assets, not the whole thing.
Right.
Okay. So if you're 25 years old, you're 30 or even 45 or 50 years old, and you've got all your money in there because you think, I don't know what's happening with the stock market or the economy or the election, those kinds of things, it is dangerous. So that's why we have been screaming, hey,
Hmm.
the message is this. It's not about what to do with your 403b, right? It's to make sure that you get a plan. Then, of course, yes, we can help you in the implementation of that by allocating your assets correctly.
Sure.
That's it. That's what it comes down to.
That's awesome. Well, and I think that asset allocation, we've talked about that. That's a big part of it. And that's something you really do want to start looking at once you turn, say, 50, once you're like 10 years out or 55, 10 years outside of retirement. You got to start looking at these things.
Yeah, I
And I think that's important. And then as you get closer, things change, though, right?
absolutely, they change. So I would actually say, Tony, that everybody needs to look at their allocation, no matter how old you are, to make sure that, hey, if you're younger and you're putting it in a target date fund of 2050, it's crazy. You think 30 years ago was like 1970. Well, no, it was 1990 something. So anyway, the point is that if you put it in a target date fund and you're saying, okay, well, I'm going to put it in the 2050 fund, so I've got 25, 26 years until retirement. That's okay at a certain level. In other words, when
Sure.
you're young and you don't have a whole lot, in your accounts, fine. But like Tony said, as you get a little bit older, you need to make sure that what is happening with your money, because you really don't know if you have a target date fund, right? I mean, you can look it up and you can see what is invested in those target date funds, but do people really do that? I'd say no, not in my
No, they
experience.
don't.
So, so, again, understanding what your risk tolerance is. Now, we can help you with that. We have a service that we provide. It's something that we can do for folks, and it's called their Color of Money Risk Analysis. And Tony, you know the deal. It's an 11-question survey that provides a tremendous amount of essential and usable data. Because what's going to happen is, after you answer these 11 questions, it's only going to take you about 10 minutes, maybe less. You're going to get a score. And that score is going to be a guide. It's not the end all be all. It's going to be a guide as to how you should invest your money, because it's saying this is who you are. This is who you are. Don't take on too much risk. Just because you're 30 years old doesn't mean you should have everything 100% in stocks. Maybe it's too volatile for you. Maybe it makes you nervous. Maybe you can't deal with it. The last thing you need is to make your retirement funds make you stressed out. Let's not do
Right.
that.
Right.
But
No.
if you take this color money risk analysis, and by the way, you can go to mycolorofmoney.org, mycolorofmoney.org. That's our personal website that you can go on there and you can take these questions. We'll actually get access to your score and we can have a conversation about it. That's what it is. It's a conversation about where you're at, where you're going, and then how can we help you get there. That's it,
Right.
Tony.
Right. Well, let's talk a little bit before we go about the urgency of when you're within 5 years of retirement. Then you really have to get serious and
Yeah.
start looking at risk and other
Mhm.
things, right? I mean,
Yes. Yes.
and that's
So
something you do to help your clients.
oh, yeah, for sure. So if we're
Right.
saying, "Hey, we're 5 years away," okay, let's 100% make sure that we are allocated correctly, because no matter what's happening in the economy, no matter if there's an election year, no matter what inflation is doing, no matter what interest rates are doing, stock market, all that stuff, you just need to make sure that, hey, this money is going to create the income that you need when you need it. That's really what it is. And when you're 5 years away, Tony, it becomes that much more important. And this has nothing to do with age, by the way. I work with several people that are going to retire between 55 and 60. So if
Wow.
you're 50 and you're going to retire at 55, you better have had some of this done. It's not about an
Right.
age, folks. It's
Yeah.
about how far away you are from retirement. And you bring up a really good point, Tony, to say if you're within 5 years and you haven't done anything and you don't really know what your strategy is going to be, you need to do something about it today.
Yeah.
Okay. We can help you get there. We can help you talk about your strategy, what you're doing, how can you reduce your risk, how can you, create income. All of these things are so, so important, and we can help you do that. Give us a call at Elspal Wealth Management.
All right. Well, yeah, and 5 years and 1 year, obviously, when your clients, Brock, before we
Yeah.
go, when
Yep.
your clients are within 1 year of retiring,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully they've been working with you, they already have a plan, but they have
Mm-hmm.
to really seriously look at, uh, between that 5 year and 1 year period, and then
Yes.
within 1 year, they have to look at things like how are they gonna cover healthcare costs,
That-
long-term care. You've looked at all those things, probably even earlier on. So really, I mean, it's hard to break it up between 10, 5, and 1 because um, really 5 years on, it's really critical. And the first step is having a plan. But part of that plan, we've talked about the parts of the plan before, healthcare planning,
Mhm.
those types of
Yeah,
things,
if you're
right?
gonna look, the number one reason why people don't retire before 65 is what? It's healthcare, right? It's
Right.
expensive. You can get on Medicare as long as you're eligible at 65, and it makes it a lot more. It makes it a lot easier to be able to maintain your lifestyle. Okay, now let's just say it's not free. By the way, right? You have to plan for your healthcare cost, even if you have Medicare and a Medicare supplement. Right now, you're probably looking between $700 and $850 a month for two people. If you're on Medicare, right? That's your Medicare Part B. That's your prescription plan. That's your supplement. So
Right.
700 to
To get a
$850.
complete coverage, people think, "Oh, Medicare is gonna
Right.
cover it all."
Right.
And, there's still premiums, there's still deductibles, there's still you have to have an Advantage or a, supplement
Supplement.
plan
Yeah.
to cover everything
Right.
because what it doesn't cover, you're still paying some copays probably in there for some prescriptions, you're probably paying for something toward hearing and vision and dental, so yeah.
Which, Tony, by the way, if you have an HSA, if you're eligible to contribute to it and you can afford it, put the max in.
Yeah.
Why? Because you can use that HSA account when you retire for exactly the expenses you're talking about.
Wow.
Okay. So
Yep.
there are tools and things you can do. This is why people like me exist, is to make sure that you're taking advantage of all the tools to get where you need to be. All right.
Perfect.
And it's out there. It's out there. You just got to work with people that know about it and can help you through these challenges. These are challenges. They're road bumps, but there's nothing we can't work around. You just have to plan as early as possible. He's talking about 10, 5, and 1 year, Tony. Look, what we're doing at 5 years and 1 year is just implementing what we've done all along and making sure that that blueprint that we put together for you 10, 15, 20 years ago is coming to fruition, right? And to make sure that the goals that we set out for you and the goals that you set out for yourself are being obtained. And they can be obtained through planning and making sure that everything is in line with your goals, objectives, time horizon.
All right.
Okay.
Well, Brock, great show today. How can our listeners get a hold of you to get this plan in place?
Yeah, give us a call at Elspal Wealth Management, 573-332-7855. And actually, our website is, you can click on a button there and you can request an appointment with me. It's alspalwealthmanagement.com, ALSPAUGH wealthmanagement.com.
All right. And again, if they want to call and set up an appointment, it's 573-332-7855. Brock, great show today. Listeners and viewers, thanks for tuning in. That does it for today's episode of the Retirement Playbook with our host, Brock Allspaw.